Hello, this is Dr. Mercola, and it is the cough, cold, and flu season, and as physicians we call that the viral upper respiratory syndromes that we are predisposed to in the fall. And there's a number of reasons. Primarily in the fall, the temperature tends to drop, and we tend to congregate more inside. We put more clothes on our skin, and we really, the ability to get valuable sunshine decreases tremendously. So most everyone's vitamin D levels fall quite dramatically, unless you live in subtropical environments, and most of us don't. And that actually, so there's a lot of, when you get sick, there's a lot of different options you can do. But I want to review some of the strategies that you can do. Probably the single most important strategy is to make sure your vitamin D level is adequate. And if you live in subtropical environments, it's as simple as going outside, making sure you're out there for a significant amount of time, and not wearing a lot of clothing so that you can have exposure to the sunshine, and that will cause your body to make appropriate vitamin D levels. And if that's not possible, next best would be using a safe tanning bed, and that you can produce pretty similar benefits. Now, those are the ideals. Now, if you're not under the ideal, the next best thing would be to take an oral vitamin D supplement. And the dosages are about 5,000 units a day for adults, most adults, and about 35 units per pound of body weight for children. And that's a starting point. Really, the only way to know if that dose is going to be good for you is to do a blood test, because some people may need 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 units a day, and they're not going to know unless you do a blood test. So get your vitamin D levels therapeutic. So that's the basic one. It's probably the strongest, because vitamin D is going to produce between 200 to 300 antimicrobial peptides that not only kill viruses, but bacteria and funguses. It's just a dramatic, effective intervention. And then after that, you're going to want to do the general healthy lifestyle. So it's important to know that when you're eating sugar, you're going to have a dramatic influence on depressing and suppressing your immune response. So if you feel yourself coming down with one of these illnesses, you have to stop all sugar immediately. Now, I'm not I'm not extremist, and I strongly believe that you should lead a balanced lifestyle. So, of course, when you're celebrating and you're basically healthy, you can have some sugar occasionally. It's not going to hurt you. But when you're sick, that's the time to have no sugar. Definitely eliminate it from your diet. It's going to be one of the wisest things you're going to do. You want to make sure that you're drinking lots of healthy fluid. Water would be the best. Especially you want to avoid all types of sugar fluids, any sodas, any artificial sweeteners. So you want to stay away from those. Another important component, and this is an interesting one, is that you have to sleep properly. You can be leading a completely healthy lifestyle, and if you aren't sleeping and you have an impaired or interrupted sleep, and you do that regularly, you will absolutely increase your risk for developing these types of illnesses. There's just no question about it. Emotional stressors, sometimes those are ones that we don't really have control under. There's circumstances that are beyond our control, and that we're exposed to these types of stresses. And you have to understand and realize that can predispose you. So if you're under a lot of stress, you want to really be healthy with everything else so that you don't reach this an overwhelming amount of stresses that really suppress your immune system to the point where you're going to succumb to one of these infections. Because you have to understand these viruses are all around you continuously. And it's really not that you got hit with some big bad infection. It's that your immune system became suppressed and that the virus was able to take hold and do its dirty work. So it really is all about building the integrity and maintaining the integrity of your immune response. Another component is exercise. And exercise is just one of the most phenomenal things that you can do to improve your health overall, and certainly your immune response. And then there's supplements. But before we get into the supplements, I want to mention some fine tunes of that, because when I gave a lecture in Washington, D.C. recently, and went down a day earlier and was really out of commission for a while, so I fell behind in my normal online work. And as a result, it wasn't a challenge for me, but I just got up earlier, and as a result of that, I got a lot less sleep. But more importantly, I was working out and exercising in a facility that was new to me in a different circumstance. So I was actually listening to an audio and working out it was a really good song that I enjoyed quite a bit, and I was working out really intensely. So actually I was over-exercising, because over-exercising can cause just as much, if not more damage than under-exercising, especially if you're in a vulnerable period where you're predisposed to a viral illness. So I got a cold. I actually got a cold. And it was because I was not sleeping enough, and I was exposed to just an overstress from the exercise. So anyone can get sick if you're not paying attention to those variables. And hopefully this knowledge and information will help you protect yourself, because the key is to recognize, be sensitive. The moment you start sneezing or noticing this first signs and symptoms is when you're going to get the most benefit. So let's go to supplements. Now, supplements are a number of varieties of different ones. The most classic one is echinacea, and has lots of people or websites or physicians are recommending that. I just want to caution you, I'm not convinced of the data on echinacea, because there's an issue with the quality of it, and then the quantity, how much you may need. So it might be a benefit, but I'm skeptical of the recommendation of using echinacea. Zinc is another one. I used to recommend zinc, and when I was recommending, I would recommend very small amounts, taking sublingually, maybe every 15 minutes or so. That may help, but I'm still a little skeptical. Another interesting one, which is not really a supplement, but really inexpensive, and seems to work for a surprisingly large number of people, and it's virtually free, is to get some hydrogen peroxide. You pour a little bit in a cap of the hydrogen peroxide, and you put your ear down like this, or your head down like this, and then you have your ear horizontal, and you pour some of that in the ear canal, and you let it stand there for a few minutes. And you might hear some bubbling or stuff, and you do it on both sides, and it's shocking how many people seem to improve with that. But let's go back to the supplements. Some of the other supplements that you can do, the ones that seem to work, in addition to the vitamin D, is vitamin C, a really potent antioxidant. But you have to be careful. If you use single isolated synthetic vitamin C, it's not going to be as good as the natural one. And one of the highest and most beneficial sources of vitamin C is acerola, that comes not only with the vitamin C, but with all the microaccessory nutrients. So that would be a really phenomenal, useful tool if you're coming down with a cold or infection. Another important one is oregano oil, a really good immune stimulus. And when you're looking for oregano oil, make sure you have an extract with cavacrol. That is the active ingredient. It seems to be really responsible for producing most of the benefit. And one that's been used for ages, really since it predated the Egyptians, was propolis, which is a product of bees, and is a profoundly beneficial anti-infective agent, and particularly useful for many of the viral illnesses that people are predisposed to. Elderflower is another one that's been shown to be helpful, as were yarrow and bone set. So these are types of supplements that could be used in conjunction with the far more important lifestyle changes and modifications, which could not only prevent the disease from happening to begin with, which will happen probably the vast majority of times. Most people I know who are implementing these lifestyle changes, they just don't get sick. They don't get sick. And these are people who would get continuously multiple infections throughout the year. I can't tell you the hundreds of people who told me that. So that's the primary thing. But then again, even if you haven't been doing that, if the moment the first signs of these symptoms of the cold or the flu come on, that you implement these changes, and then you're going to be far more beneficial as opposed to waiting until the symptoms become full-blown, and then you're really disabled and crippled with the symptoms. So hopefully, this information will be helpful, because these conditions are pervasive. It's pandemic, and it's very common for most all people that could come down with a few of these infections a year. So if you're following these guidelines, I think you really be able to help you and your family take control of your health and prevent these infections for the season.